What if the food you have been eating every morning, either quietly working in your favour or silently working against you in ways that have nothing to do with the food itself, has been decided not by what you chose, but by 3 decisions so small you have never given them a second thought? And here is the part that will surprise you. It is not about whether the food is safe. That debate is largely settled. What is not settled is a specific category of decision, small, easy to overlook, surrounding the food rather than being the food. Those decisions are so minor, so habitual, that most people with diabetes never pause to examine them. But those decisions can be the difference between a fasting reading of 143 and a fasting reading of 97, every single morning. I'm Dr. Elena Marsh, and I've spent the last 18 years working specifically with adults over 50 who are managing type 2 diabetes. Not managing it the way a textbook describes, but managing it the way real people do, with real kitchens, real habits, and real frustration when the numbers don't match the effort. Today, I want to have a straight, honest conversation about the 3 right ways to eat eggs if you are diabetic and over 50. Not the general version, the specific version. And I want to warn you, stay with me all the way to the end, because I'm going to share something about a morning hormone mechanism that operates in the body every single day between waking and the first meal, and that almost no one in this conversation ever names. Once you understand what that window is doing to blood sugar before the first bite even arrives, the way you approach your entire morning, not just the egg, will never look quite the same. Before we get into it, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your city or country in the comments. I genuinely read them, and it helps me understand who I am speaking to every single week. Now let's get into it. Let's start with the foundation, because without understanding this one thing, none of the 3 ways I'm about to share will fully make sense. Most mornings begin the same way for someone managing type 2 diabetes. There is a kitchen, a familiar breakfast plate, a habit built carefully over years of trying to do things right. The choices on that plate were made deliberately, a food approved, a food researched, a portion measured. And then the number comes back higher than it should be, again, for reasons that don't match the effort. That experience, trying hard and getting the wrong result, is where this conversation begins. Because the reason is almost never what it looks like. Here is what is actually happening at the cellular level, and why it matters for every choice on that plate. When a person over 50 has type 2 diabetes, the central challenge is not simply that blood sugar goes up after eating. Blood sugar goes up in everyone after eating. The real challenge is the recovery. How quickly and how cleanly does the body bring that number back down? That recovery depends almost entirely on something called insulin sensitivity. How well the cells in the muscles and the liver can hear and respond to the insulin signal. Insulin is like a key, and the cells have locks on them. In a healthy metabolic state, the key slides in smoothly, the door opens, glucose enters the cell, and blood sugar comes down. In type 2 diabetes, especially after 50 when hormonal changes and reduced muscle mass both play a role, the lock has stiffened. The key still fits, but it takes more force, more time, more insulin produced just to get the same door open. And while the door is stiff and slow to open, glucose is circling in the bloodstream, waiting. That is what a high reading is, not a failure of the pancreas, a traffic jam at the cell wall. Now, why does this matter for eggs specifically? Because protein, real, complete, high-quality protein of the kind eggs provide, is one of the few dietary inputs with a direct and measurable effect on how smoothly that lock and key process works at the cellular level. Protein from eggs does not raise blood sugar. The glycemic index of an egg is essentially 0. But what protein does do, and this is the part that changes everything, is set the conditions under which everything else eaten at the same meal gets processed. When protein is present at the beginning of a meal, it slows how quickly the stomach empties into the small intestine. The technical term for that is gastric emptying, and slowing it means food moves into digestion more gradually. That means glucose from any carbohydrates in the same meal enters the bloodstream more gradually, a controlled, measured release rather than a sudden wave. The cells have time to respond. The lock has time to open. The traffic jam does not form. That is the biology underneath the 3 ways coming up. Keep that image in mind, the stiffened lock, the key that needs time, because it will make every one of these 3 approaches feel obvious rather than arbitrary. Now, before going into the first way, there is something that needs to be addressed directly. A belief that has kept many people over 50 away from eggs entirely, and kept them away for reasons that made complete sense at the time. For years, eggs were treated with suspicion because of their cholesterol content. Doctors warned against them, nutrition guidelines recommended limiting them, and people who were already trying hard to manage a metabolic condition did the reasonable thing. They listened, they reduced, some eliminated eggs from their mornings altogether. That advice made sense given what was known at the time. The problem is that the science moved, and the guidance did not always follow. I want you to hear this clearly. Decades of research have now consistently separated dietary cholesterol, the kind in an egg, from the blood cholesterol levels that actually affect cardiovascular risk. The body tightly regulates blood cholesterol, independent of how much is consumed in food for most people. The egg was not the problem. And for someone managing type 2 diabetes, removing eggs based on that outdated concern meant removing one of the most metabolically protective breakfast foods available. Complete protein, 0 glycemic index, a delivery system for amino acids that directly support insulin sensitivity at the cellular level. The fear was understandable. The fear was also, for most people, unnecessary. If eggs were removed from the morning plate years ago because of cholesterol concerns, the evidence now supports putting them back. Not reluctantly, confidently. Before we go further, take 1 second and drop your name and where you are watching from in the comments. I go through every single one, and I genuinely want to know who is part of this community. Now, the first right way to eat eggs for blood sugar control is this. Always eat the egg before the carbohydrate. Not with it, before it. Most people who eat eggs for breakfast eat them alongside something else. A piece of toast, a small serving of fruit, maybe half a cup of oatmeal added because it was recommended as heart healthy. Everything goes in together, a bite of egg, a bite of toast, a bite of fruit, in no particular order, because that is simply how meals work. That seems reasonable. But here is what is actually happening in the body when that sequence is random. The carbohydrate, the toast, the oatmeal, the fruit, begins breaking down into glucose almost immediately as it hits the stomach. If that process begins before any protein has had a chance to slow gastric emptying, that slowing of stomach movement described earlier, the glucose enters the bloodstream quickly and steeply. The lock is stiff. The insulin response is sluggish. The number climbs. Run the same meal in a different order. The egg comes first. 2 eggs eaten fully before anything else. The protein from those eggs begins signaling the stomach to slow down. The carbohydrate that follows enters a stomach already in a slower, more measured processing mode. The glucose release is more gradual. The cells have time. The number does not climb the same way. Research into what scientists call the food order effect, the measurable difference in blood sugar outcomes based purely on the sequence in which foods are consumed, has consistently shown that when protein and vegetables are eaten before carbohydrates in the same meal, post-meal blood sugar readings are measurably lower than when those exact same foods are eaten in a mixed or carbohydrate-first sequence. The food did not change. The body did not change. Only the order changed. And in some studies, the difference reaches 15 to 20% lower post-meal blood sugar compared to carbohydrate-first eating. That is not a small margin. That margin is the difference between watching a number come down and watching it stay stuck, despite the effort, despite the discipline, despite doing what was supposed to work. The order is not a detail, it is the mechanism. I want to tell you about a patient I will call Helen. Helen was 63 years old when she came to me, 8 years into managing type 2 diabetes, meticulous in her habits in the way that only someone who has been scared enough to become meticulous can be. She ate eggs almost every morning, 2 scrambled eggs on a small plate alongside half a grapefruit and 2 thin slices of whole grain toast. She had been told by her previous doctor that this was a perfectly reasonable diabetic-friendly breakfast, and she believed it. But her 2-hour post-breakfast readings were running consistently between 172 and 185, and she could not understand why when she was doing everything she had been told to do. When she described her breakfast routine to me, she mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that she usually ate the grapefruit first because she liked to start with something fresh. Then the toast while the eggs finished cooking. Then the eggs. I asked her to make one change. Eat the eggs first, finish them completely, then the grapefruit. Then, if she still wanted the toast, eat it last. Same foods, same quantities, same morning, only the order. 3 weeks later, she came back with her glucose log. Her 2-hour post-breakfast readings had dropped to an average of 139. She had not changed her medication. She had not changed her portion sizes. She had not changed what she was eating. She had only changed when each thing went into her mouth. She looked at me with an expression I have seen many times, not quite disbelief, but the particular frustration of someone who has been working hard at the wrong variable for years. The second right way to eat eggs for blood sugar control is to pair them specifically with foods that contain soluble fiber. And it is important to be precise about this because there is a meaningful difference between fiber in general and soluble fiber specifically. Soluble fiber is the kind that dissolves in water and forms a gel-like substance in the digestive tract, a physical barrier that slows the movement of glucose out of the small intestine and into the bloodstream. Not a metaphor, a mechanical slowdown. And when that barrier is present alongside the protein already slowing gastric emptying, that same stomach-slowing effect from the egg, the combined effect on blood sugar is considerably stronger than either one alone. The best sources of soluble fiber that pair naturally with eggs are avocado, which also provides the kind of monounsaturated fat that supports insulin sensitivity at the cellular level, cooked vegetables like spinach, zucchini and bell peppers, and whole legumes like black beans or lentils in small amounts. Half an avocado alongside 2 eggs is not just a popular food combination, it is a combination where each element is doing a specific job. The protein from the egg slowing the stomach, the soluble fiber from the avocado slowing glucose transfer from the intestine, and the fat from the avocado supporting the cell's ability to respond to insulin more readily. These things work together. The problem is that most people build their egg breakfast around what they enjoy, rather than what creates this combination of effects. And without knowing the mechanism, there is no way to know what is being missed. Now, where this becomes important to get right, and this is the part most people do not hear, is in what the egg is paired with on the other side. White bread and eggs, hash browns and eggs, sweetened ketchup and eggs, pasteurized orange juice alongside eggs. Each of these additions interrupts the entire process described above. The refined carbohydrate or the added sugar overwhelms the slowing effect that the protein and fiber were working to create. The glucose from those foods enters fast, and the protective benefit of the egg is functionally cancelled out. The egg did not fail. The combination failed. If you are still here and finding this useful, go ahead and type the number 2 in the comments. It tells me you are with me and getting something real from this, and I want to know. Now, the third right way to eat eggs for blood sugar control is the one I promised at the very beginning of this video. Earlier, I mentioned a morning hormone mechanism, something that operates in the body every single day between waking and the first meal. Here is what it is, and here is why getting protein into that window changes everything. There is a principle in nutrition science describing how the body regulates hunger when protein intake is insufficient. When the body has not received adequate protein in a meal, it continues to generate hunger signals. It is not looking for calories, it is looking specifically for protein, and it will keep driving appetite until it finds enough. This is called the protein leverage effect, and researchers have been studying it for over 20 years. But the reason this matters specifically in the morning, and this is the mechanism that almost no one connects to blood sugar management, is what the body is already doing before breakfast arrives. In the first 30 to 60 minutes after waking, cortisol levels are naturally elevated. The liver is already releasing stored glucose into the bloodstream as part of the body's morning activation sequence. That cortisol-glucose response happens whether or not food is eaten. Getting protein into that window dampens it. The protein leverage signal and the cortisol response are both operating in that same early morning hour, and together they determine the hormonal tone for how the body manages glucose for the rest of the day. Waiting to eat means that window does its work unchecked, and the protein leverage signal runs unfilled until it finds what it needs, usually in the form of mid-morning carbohydrates that no one planned for and no one tracks. The practical implication for someone managing diabetes is this. If a meal is low in protein, the body will push for more food, often in the form of quick energy carbohydrates within an hour or two of eating. That mid-morning hunger, the urge for a cracker, a piece of fruit, a small handful of something sweet, is not a failure of willpower. It is the body executing a biological program to find the protein it did not get at breakfast. And every one of those small, in-between additions creates a blood sugar event. Small, maybe, but consistent. And over the course of a day, those consistent small events add up to numbers that are harder to explain when everything on the plate at the main meal looked fine. The third right way to eat eggs, then, is to eat enough of them, or to pair them with enough additional protein that the protein leverage signal is fully satisfied at the meal itself. For most adults over 50, 2 eggs provide roughly 12 to 13 grams of protein. That is a start, but research into protein needs in older adults with diabetes consistently finds that the threshold for metabolic satiety at breakfast is closer to 25 to 30 grams. 2 eggs alone may not be enough. But 2 eggs alongside 2 tablespoons of cottage cheese, or 2 eggs with a small portion of smoked salmon, or 2 eggs with half a cup of cooked lentils will bring total breakfast protein into the range where the leverage signal goes quiet and the mid-morning carbohydrate surge does not begin. I want to tell you about a patient I will call George. George was 68, a retired engineer who had been managing his diabetes for 11 years with what his own endocrinologist described as good effort and frustrating consistency, meaning his numbers were consistently higher than they should have been given how carefully he was eating. George ate 2 eggs every morning without fail. But around 10:30 every morning, regardless of how satisfied he felt at breakfast, he would find himself hungry in a specific, almost irritable way. Not stomach-growling hungry, but a kind of restless, unfocused need for something. He had chalked it up to getting older. He would have a piece of fruit, sometimes a few crackers, occasionally a small bowl of cereal. Each of these felt innocent. None of them were. I asked George to describe exactly what he ate with his eggs. 2 eggs, scrambled with a little olive oil, and black coffee. That was it. 12 grams of protein and nothing else. The protein leverage signal was still running at 11 a.m. because breakfast had satisfied his hunger receptors but not his protein requirement. I asked him to add 3 ounces of smoked salmon to his egg plate, something he already enjoyed but had never thought of as a breakfast food. Total breakfast protein now sat at approximately 30 grams. 2 weeks later, George told me the 10:30 hunger had essentially disappeared. He was making it to lunch without any in-between eating for the first time in years. At his next A1C check 3 months later, his number had come down from 7.6% to 7.1%. His daytime readings were more stable. He had not changed his dinner. He had not changed his exercise. He had only closed the protein gap at breakfast. If you have stayed this far and you know someone who has been working hard at this for years and still not getting where they want to be, go ahead and share this video with them. And in the comments, let me know. Does this explain something that has been confusing about your own numbers? I want to know. Let me quickly pull together the most common mistakes people with diabetes over 50 make around eggs, because avoiding these alone will move the needle. Mistake 1. Eating the carbohydrate first. Eat the egg first. Finish it completely. Carbohydrate goes last. Mistake 2. Pairing eggs with high glycemic additions. Ketchup, white toast, sweetened juices. Each one cancels the protection the egg is building. If it adds neither soluble fiber nor protein, eat it last and small. Mistake 3. Stopping at 2 eggs and calling protein handled. 2 eggs are a foundation. Add something. Smoked salmon, cottage cheese, cooked lentils, that brings the total into the 25 to 30 gram range. Mistake 4. Cooking eggs in significant added butter. The egg yolk already contains fat. Extra saturated fat from butter changes how efficiently the cells respond to insulin in the hours after eating. Cook them dry in a non-stick pan or boil them. Same protein, same nutrients, nothing added that works against the numbers. Mistake 5. Eating eggs late in the morning. The cortisol glucose window is open in the first 30 to 60 minutes after waking. Get protein in during that window. Waiting until 10 a.m. means the window has already done its damage. Here is the ready-to-use plan starting tomorrow morning. Wake up. Within 30 to 40 minutes, prepare 2 eggs, dry scrambled or hard boiled from a batch made the night before. Add a protein source alongside. 3 ounces of smoked salmon, 2 tablespoons of cottage cheese, or half a cup of cooked beans. Eat those first, completely. Then half an avocado or a generous serving of cooked spinach or bell peppers. If toast or fruit is wanted, eat it after everything else, in a small amount. Drink water or unsweetened tea. That is it. Nothing requires a special shopping trip. Nothing is expensive. Nothing on that plate is unfamiliar. The only things that are new are the order and the protein total. I want to close with something George said at one of our appointments after 3 months of following this approach. He had been quiet for a moment after seeing his latest numbers, and then he said, "For 11 years, I was afraid of what my numbers were going to say. Every morning I would check them and feel like my body was just running its own program that I had no access to. And I kept thinking, I'm doing everything right, why isn't it responding? Now I check the numbers and I feel like I'm in the conversation, like my body is actually listening. I'm not afraid of the morning anymore." Your body is not your enemy. That is what this is really about. It is not about eggs. It is about giving back a sense of agency over health that chronic illness can quietly take away. It is about replacing years of doing everything right and still feeling like something is working against you with a mechanism you can actually use. It is about replacing fear with the specific, correct information that was missing and watching the numbers finally respond the way the effort always deserved. Your body is not running against you. It is responding to exactly what it receives. When it receives the right protein at the right amount in the right sequence alongside the right companions, it responds, sometimes faster than you would ever expect. Start tomorrow. 2 eggs, enough protein to cross the threshold, soluble fiber alongside, carbohydrate last. Come back in the comments next week and tell me what your numbers look like. If this video gave you one mechanism you did not fully understand before, one thing you are going to change at tomorrow's breakfast, please give it a like. It takes 1 second and it tells me that this kind of specific, practical content is worth making more of. And if you know someone who has been managing their blood sugar for years and feels like they are doing everything right and still not getting where they want to be, please send them this video. Sometimes one piece of information, arriving at the right moment, is the thing that finally makes the picture complete. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not medical advice, and it does not replace the guidance of your physician or healthcare team. Always speak with your doctor before making changes to your diet, especially if you are taking medication for diabetes. I will see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves. You deserve it.